Mindrot, Dawning. It's an album that speaks for itself upon listening. Stylistically, Dawning is a perfect blend of death metal and doom metal, but ironically it hardly sounds like that. It has a sound of its own because it's hard to compare this to other doom metal bands. It's beautifully composed, it has a lot of originality, and it has a very distinct vibe. It's as if the vibe is unwelcoming, but it tempts you to come in. It dares you to come out of your comfort zone and think consciously. Now, the reason I bought this album was because Dan Kaufman of the first Dystopia album was in the lineup. I definitely wasn't expecting anything as good as this when I bought it. But what you should expect is the same sewery metal that Dystopia is known to do. The intro, Dawning, is an instrumental with organs and rumbling drums. It encourages thinking power, but it snowballs itself by layering instruments on top of each other. First you have the guitars, then the drums, then the organs, and then even more guitars. And that seeps into Anguish, which is a total grime fest. Picture Carcinogen on steroids. Everyone involved is channeling their souls into the performance. You feel the wistfulness in their voices and the way the guitars strum. Even the drums, by their expressiveness and their virtuosity, you can picture how the drummer is invested into what he's doing. The third song is Burden. It's a brooding destroyer of moods. For this one, walk in a cemetery with your headphones on. You'll be glad you did. Do you lead a good life? No. The production is killer. Twangy bass, sludgy guitars, sewery, non-distorted passages, clear, snappy drums. Everything that's supposed to sound isolated does, but when it's time to sound big, the soundstage gets massive. The drums don't just plod along. They're written to give the guitars room while accentuating the lyrics. So many emotions and ideas are tackled throughout the album. You'll think of things that went wrong with your life, and maybe you can use this opportunity to solve them afterwards. That is the power of this album. Sometimes you won't even notice the changes in the progressions that go on within the songs. It's because the album plays like a journey, like a quest. But it's also insanely heavy. Just listen to Wither Soul. The way the guitars and the vocals blast at you all at once, it's just, yeah. And the bass on Forlorn is pretty mind-bogglingly uncomfortable. And I really love the beginning to Internal Isolation. It is absolutely crazy. Again, picture Carcinogen on steroids. 3 minutes in, and you get a mosh fest that sounds like Slave Chains by Dystopia. It's the angriest and the most nuts song on the album. Even the sample at the end is nerve-wracking. The final song is Across Vast Oceans. You have acoustic guitars. It sounds huge, and it's the most depressing song on the album. Strongly makes you consider your life. But imagine Leonard Cohen's voice singing a funeral doom song. And then there are wind chimes at the end of the album, as if you're finally at peace. Speaking of the vocals, Adrian Larox is one of the most dynamic vocalists I've ever heard. He growls, screams, sings, and he does it in whatever fashion fits the moment. Slow, fast, depressed, pissed, at full blast. The first time listening to this album, you never know what he's gonna do next. There's more of a doom metal vibe here than on their second album, Soul, which is more polished and has more hardcore hints. There aren't a lot of fast moments on the album, but it's always heavy. It's a little difficult to describe the kind of sound that this album has because Dawning is in its own class. I believe that it's an album that can appeal to all generations who are into this kind of extreme music. If you love dystopia, doom metal, or death metal, then Dawning is your album. Thank you for watching Mosh Pit and the Pendulum. Grind on!